Hey, church, just want to give you a little bit of information about two meetings we have coming up. The first one is the evangelism class or practicum. That's Saturday morning at 8 o'clock. What I wanted to tell you about that is that it's going to be very practical. So, yes, we'll do some teaching in that class and we'll do some memorization. We'll even have a little bit of memorization homework probably. But what we want to do more than anything is encourage one another to share the gospel. And so it's going to have a very practical side. So the first meeting, we'll just talk about like how can we get into gospel conversations, and I'll be answering some questions or asking some questions about asking, what are the situations where you want to get better at sharing the gospel? So like, is it in conversations out in the community when you just meet a random person? Is that where you need help? Like how can you present the gospel in a situation like that? Or is it like when talking with a family member or a coworker? Is it that? So I want to find out where are the biggest problems or the biggest needs in terms of types of situations where you're trying to share the gospel, and then address those. So this very first meeting is going to focus on how can we direct a conversation towards the gospel, and what kinds of questions can we ask getting ready, kind of prep to share the gospel. And so that's what this meeting is going to be about, and we'll encourage one another to share the gospel during the week. So let me encourage you just in leading up to that meeting for you to really focus upon praying for lost people that you know and that you come into contact with on a daily basis, and ask the Lord to really stir your heart to want to share the gospel with them and to gain some wisdom in doing that. In closing on that particular topic, just want to mention a study that I read about recently. I think it was a pottery business. And what they did was they ran an experiment where they got half of the company to work on producing quality pottery. And then they got another group to focus on quantity, just mass producing lots of pottery. When it was all said and done, the experiment showed that the group that focused on quantity actually also had better quality. So you might be able to kind of think about like, why would that happen? And it kind of goes with the cliche that we say, practice makes perfect. The more you practice something, the better you get. I want to relate that to evangelism. So the more you try to share the gospel, the more you're going to learn. You're going to find out what works, what doesn't work. You're going to find out some questions that you don't have good answers to, that you need to work on good answers for, and all those kind of things. So you'll get better as you do it, not necessarily by sitting in a class and just trying to perfect your presentation. So that's one thing. That's the evangelism practicum. I'm calling it a practicum because I want it to be super practical, and I want us to spend the bulk of our time practicing sharing the gospel. And even some of our times, it won't happen this particular meeting, but many of our meetings, after several of the meetings that we have, many of our meetings are going to be meeting someplace and then actually sharing the gospel with people and engaging people with the gospel. So it's going to be, if you don't really want to share the gospel, I mean, I hate to say it, you probably don't need to come to the meeting. Like if you just want to learn how, but you don't have any intentions of sharing the gospel, this class isn't for you. You're not ready. What you need to do is sit home and pray about your want to and your desire to be obedient in sharing the gospel. I hate to be that harsh, but it's a fact. I don't want to waste your time. All right. Second point of emphasis is the prayer meeting on Sunday night that we're going to have. And so just to prep you a little bit for that. So what we're going to do is we're going to have several types of prayer for different things, and we're going to pray in different kinds of ways as a group. So hopefully a bunch of you will come. And so sometimes we'll divide up into men's groups and women's groups, and then pray in those groups in different parts of the church. Sometimes I'll count people off and you'll pray in groups of 4 or 5, and there'll be mixed gender groups. Sometimes we'll pray together as an entire church together in a group, and perhaps with a microphone or just one person praying at a time and the rest of us amening. Keep in mind that when we're praying together as a church, you want to avoid words like I and me, and instead you want to use words like our and we, because we're praying together corporately. And when somebody prays in a large gathering, it's good for all of us to say amen if you can agree with the prayer. And what that does is it lets everybody know in the group that it's us praying. It's not just an individual praying. We want to learn to pray better corporately as an entire church, and not think of our prayer times as individual quiet times that we're just doing in a larger setting. So on Sunday night, we'll have a time of prayer that is just in adoration to God. That'll be one segment of the prayer this particular Sunday night. And then we'll have a segment of prayer that is outreach oriented for the gospel being spread locally and globally. And then we'll pray and intercede for a couple of different missionaries. And then the last part of prayer on Sunday night is going to be about healing and health. There are lots of people within the church that are struggling with different health issues and that sort of thing. So we'll be praying for those, and then we'll finish up by sharing the Lord's Supper. Now every Sunday night when we do this, the first Sunday night of the month, it won't always be that particular order, but we will do like 3 different kinds of prayer focus and 3 of various types of group prayer. So we're going to be constantly varying things and changing things a little bit in terms of types of prayer, because there are lots of ways to pray together as a church rather than us just being in the same building and all praying at the same time. So I hope you're curious. I hope you want to come. I hope you'll be a part if you can. Anyway, just giving you a little bit of heads up here about those 2 meetings. See ya.